I'm just trying to decide if I'm comfortable even talking about
This one's wife. Out with a bang or a whimper? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Once upon a time, there was a narcissist. This narcissist lived in California. Her mother was a narcissist, as was her father. Her mother buggered off for a period of time, and her father took the slack by treating her like a princess, which didn't really ultimately help. This narcissist became a mediocre actress. Some also suggest that she curried favour in an alternative way by providing favours aboard yachts. There are others who suggest that she had an involvement in a particular role through something called Soho House. But either way, throughout all of this, her behaviours remained driven by her narcissism. And her narcissism encouraged her to aim high, to find somebody that would provide her with wealth, with prominence, with fame, all because, of course, that would enable her to get hold of the prime aims far more readily and in larger amounts. Because, as a great band once said, everything counts in large amounts. This mediocre actress married, maybe once, maybe twice, before then ensnaring the jackpot known as Prince Harry. The narcissism rubbed its hands with glee and, with a maniacal laugh, stated, "We can't believe our luck. She's managed to ensnare a prince. This is completely beyond what we expected. But nevertheless, let us ensure that she ropes him in." And thus, with lashings of spicy poontang and supposed support, and playing the victim and race card, Harry fell prey to this narcissist. And all of a sudden, the world became acquainted with she who has become known as this one's wife. There were those, your glorious narrator amongst them, who recognised all was not well with this individual. Indeed, your glorious narrator highlighting many years ago that she is a narcissist. Others recognised that there wasn't something quite right about her behaviours, but couldn't quite put their finger upon what it was, save they didn't like her. And then there are others who, over the passage of time, have seen time and time again the way that she has behaved and reached the conclusion there's something not right about this one. She's a wrong 'un. Nevertheless, this individual, having snared her prince, went on to achieve global fame, or infamy perhaps, and thus with that came wealth. And the narcissism threw up its hands with great joy and glee, for there were so many people she could control. There was so much fuel that she could obtain. And she was able to acquire character traits left, right, and centre. She cared not for scrutiny or accountability, for anybody that placed her under such gaze would be denounced as a racist or a hater. She went after the residual benefits, particularly that of money, like a deranged individual. And thus the world came to be acquainted with the woman that became known as this one's wife. But typical, with so many narcissists, give them enough rope and they hang themselves. And so it came to pass with this one's wife that as a consequence of her narcissism not being up to the job of keeping her in the elevated position that she somehow managed to fluke herself into obtaining, the cracks began to appear. She ostracised her father and her half-siblings. She caused rifts with her husband's family. She was accused of bullying staff. Lies started to appear whenever she would open her mouth. Revisions of history occurred, and each time she cried and bleated about being victimised. She recruited lieutenants, the improbably named one, for instance. Others, as she sought to ingratiate herself within the A-list, but then failed at that also. And thus, there were those around the world who thought, I've heard of her, she married a prince, so what, I don't really care. Then there were others that saw her as some kind of saviour, that they lived vicariously through her as she embodied the dreams that they had, or been ones which they never achieved. For others, it was an opportunity to see her as a person of colour taking on the colonialists, and therefore they pinned their colours to that particular misguided mast. For others, she simply served a purpose for their own agendas. But then a much larger group came to form, those that could actually see what she was doing, those that examined the evidence and realised she is not a pleasant person. She tells porky pies. She revises history. She is manipulative. She looks to overshadow the events of other individuals. She always has to make it about her. She's mistreating her husband. And thus, of this group, there became those that wanted to see where would it all end up. Your glorious narrator has, for much time, explained her behaviour through the lens of her narcissism, so you understand why she does as she does, why the dynamic with Harry is as it is, why she's treated her father in the manner that she has, why does she look at her siblings in the way that she does. Understanding her narcissism gives you fantastic insight into the world, what's going on behind those dead eyes, what she's thinking, what she'll do next. And as part of all of that, one thing that people have wondered as they continue to watch is, we're not interested in her because it's her, we're interested in seeing where this flaming train wreck is going to end up. And of course, one point is she going to go out with a bang? Or will it be a case that it will be simply a whimper? Will there be one all-consuming act of exposure whereby she completely becomes undone, so that even those who are blinded to what she is could have no excuse for sudden realization? That she behaves in such a fashion that the level of abhorrence is so high that those supporters turn their backs, and the others who have seen what she is for such a long time simply nod and say, "I told you so." Could it be that there will be that one act which causes her to implode, and thus she goes out with a bang? Or, instead, is it almost going to be like a death through 1,000 cuts? Is she steadily going to head towards obscurity, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that she's hardly ever spoken about, that she's not frequented the news, that there's less reaction about her? In fact, did she ever really exist? As if the life force is so slowly sucked out of her. It's a question that I see posed on many occasions. Is there going to be that all-encompassing explosion whereby she goes out with a bang, or will she simply disappear with a whimper? It is my considered view that ultimately this one's wife will meet obscurity with a whimper, that she will simply fade away. The fact is that she is such a dividing individual that even where she does something where she tells blatant lies, there are still those that will support her. Even where she might be exposed with evidence, there will be still those that will decry that evidence and will not accept it. Those individuals walk amongst us. They've demonstrated time and time again their inability to accept evidence as presented. They've demonstrated their lack of critical thinking. And they're so entrenched in supporting her, even though their numbers do dwindle, that notwithstanding something which many people would go, surely that's it, they will still stand by her. That there would not be the wholesale turning of backs upon her. And therefore, I do not see that she will go out with a bang. Furthermore, I do not think that her narcissism would actually lead her to do such a thing, but rather it would be a succession of crappy failings. That she even hasn't got it about her to fail so spectacularly to be exposed in that way. Instead, I see that it'll be with a whimper. That more and more people will recognise what she is, and whilst they'll continue to watch, the things that matter to her will become all the more distant to her. The A-list, nothing to do with her. Previous supporters within that A-list recognise that they'll be tainted by association and keep their distance. That she'll continue to be able to con somebody to take an interest, but not of the A-list, not of the B-list, dropping down into the C and the D-list. That she'll cling on. That once upon a time where she thought that she could be the face of Dior, that she seeks to be the face of something much lesser, but nevertheless, it still pays some bills. It still provides her with some prominence. That over time, the fame will ebb away from her. And eventually, when Harry is jettisoned, and that she leeches onto somebody else, because it'll have to be somebody else, because she lacks the talent and charisma to succeed in her own right, it is then the level of interest in her will particularly fail. There will be a spike in it when the inevitable divorce occurs and all the shit show that's associated with that occurs. It will be an absolute clusterfuck with many people in the stalls watching it all as it's played out in horrendous, pin-sharp, crikey vision. But beyond that, and when Harry returns to the United Kingdom, his tail between his legs, then she'll have to find somebody else. And she will find somebody else, because there's always some mug that can be found by the narcissist, but they won't have the level of prominence that she has enjoyed. And thus, with the press becoming less interested in what she's doing, and the person that she's with not being a clickable value, she will start to fade away. Even if, in the less likely event that the marriage prevails with Harry, they will become so ridiculed that so few people will want anything to do with them, that they will continue to hawk around the trashy brand that is the Sussexes until nearly every planet on Earth recognises that these two are just a pair of grifting shysters, that nobody will want anything to do with them, and once again they will fade from view. Whether it remains being with Harry or without him, the outcome for her is eventual obscurity. It will happen, but it will continue to be by circling the drain before eventually falling down it, rather than being blasted into oblivion. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.